Welcome to another video from the Man's Cave. Guys, this is an exciting video I've been excited to do for a while. It's a bigger piece and I wasn't sure that I could pull it off until now, and we did it. So first thing up, we make a wax piece. This is actually a hollow cast and we're spruing it up here. This is the first primer coat from our HellFire, and this is a suspended slurry basically, and it is the face coat that goes on, so it primes the wax. Otherwise, HellFire likes to flake underneath the first layers. So put this on, we don't have any problems. So this is the first layer of our primer coat, and once it's dry, I'm putting in these nails. I can't remember the name of them, but they'll support the internal structure that we're going to be pouring here in a little bit. So this is the second coat, and I'm doing 3 to 5 coats depending on what I think it needs. I think this one I did right around 5 coats because it was such a big piece. Once our primer coat's done, we're going to go ahead and move on over to the HellFire coat. This is the product I've developed, and I like putting into a smaller container. It helps keep the original container from drying out and from getting debris and stuff in it. So anyway, we're putting on the first coat of HellFire. And when you're putting on the HellFire coat, you put it on thick, like you're trying to get an 1/8 inch layer on every coat. And so you're laying it on there really thick. You're not trying to thin it out by any means. You're trying to put it on there thick, using the brush as like a spatula. And so you're trying to get a good thick coat of each coat on. And again, I think I put on 5 coats on this for a total of 10 coats, letting it dry most of the way between each coat. Here I'm just mixing up some investment slurry, and I'm just actually guessing on how much I need, adding a little bit more as I mix it here. And then I left the nasal cavity hollow on this, and then poured it. So now we're moving on to spruing it on the outside. And I figured out this method of doing it. Since we're not dipping this, it's hard to get all the sprues where you need them. And since we can build this in layers, I'm putting a sprue system on the outside of the shell coat. So now we're just going to do the same thing we did with the rest of the piece. We're going to add 5 layers over the sprue system. So yeah, kind of a cool way to do it. First time I think it's been shown on the internet like this. So of course, one of the only reasons to do it is if you're putting on layers of refractory on to cast metal. So now we're moving out into the burnout session, and I tipped it on its side, and I'm burning out the cup here. This is the styrofoam cup that we put wax over, and then we sprue our piece too. So when I'm burning out my pieces, I start at the bottom, and I gently warm it up very slowly. This is a kind of a time-lapse video, so it shows it done very fast. But you take your time and burn it out very slowly from the bottom up, and this will allow the wax to melt from the bottom up. So you're not creating cracks in your piece. You'll still get some a little bit here and there, but not enough to wreck the piece. So I'm burning out the jaw here now. Same thing from the bottom up. And yeah. And I know that it's done when that flame kind of extinguishes and really stops burning. We just have a little bit of smoke. Once they're burnt out, then I move them into a pottery kiln. And this has been going for 3 days, and I gradually increased the temperature up to 800 degrees. And I left them in there for 3 days just to make sure that they were good and dry. That investment is got a lot of water in it, so we want to make sure that we do not have any moisture during the pour. So once the 3 days were up, I ramped it up to 1100 degrees and then did the final burnout. But while we're waiting for it to dry, we're taking apart some lamps. And these are table lamps that you can buy at the thrift store. I don't know if your area has as many as my area does, but these are quite readily available. These were $10 a piece here. The other one was $5, that first one I took apart. And this is all a zinc-based alloy, and they vary a little bit from lamp to lamp, but pretty close in their alloy makeup. So just a fantastic metal to work with. And if you're looking for a metal to melt down that's easy to melt down, that's easy on your foundry and easy to melt, then this is the metal for you. So we just started up our burner, and I need to come up with a better design for my foundry, but I figured I'd run with this one for now until it kind of gets wrecked, and then we'll kind of do a redesign. But it works good. So out comes the first. This is the jaw set of the two castings, and I just set it in sand and put sand around it. So if I did get a crack, this would take care of that issue of it coming out. And once in a while I do have a crack where it would have poured out, and that would have been really annoying, causing problems in the cast piece. So I like just to get ahead of it and just put it in sand. It helps keep it warm and allows us to cast easily. So pouring the first one here. I've removed all the dross, so there's not any dross going into the casting. And then I did melt some more. I spent some more time and melted more what I call spelter. Some call it a Zamac or a zinc alloy. So moving on to the next pour. This is our big one. This has got me really nervous as it's such a huge pour. And I actually did have to put a little bit more sand around it than what you're seeing, just to help keep a crack that formed between the cup and the piece from spilling out. I don't know that it was a big deal, but I did it anyway just to be able to fill that cup up with material, so as it shrinks it pulls from that cup. Now this is an hour or two later. I'm pulling it out, and it's still hot. There's still a lot of warmth to this, so I have a glove on here. And this is cold water, so that it'll cool it down well. I actually let it sit in the sand for several hours before I pulled it and put it in the water. I didn't want the metal to quickly cool, as that can crystallize the metal and make it really brittle. So this metal is it's a really hard metal, but it lends itself to being quite brittle, so you have to be careful on that. So just let it sit in the sand for a couple hours, then pull it, and then dip it in the water. And I dip it in the water as I like what it does for the shell. It just reduces the dust, number one, so I'm not breathing any ceramic dusts. And then I think it makes it easier personally, but some might not. Now we're cutting off the sprue system. And I'm just using a regular cutoff wheel on my grinder here. It seems to work well, so pretty easy to do. And then you spend a bunch of time cleaning off the ceramic coating. So once the coating is close to being done, I move over to the getting the investment out of the interior, and I'm just using a screwdriver to kind of break it up and squirt it out. I actually did think about taking it to the power wash. I think it would be easier to get it out. And I don't have the sandblasting in here of sandblasting it, but it's been sandblasted already, and I've played around with some color a little bit as well. But now we're using the Dremel, and I'm using a burr here. We're just using different bits to clean up all of the imperfections that I don't like, and the casting yeah, just the different casting sprues and things of that nature. Once you get to a certain place with the cleanup, then you can switch over to some sanding and polishing type bits. So super fun process. I really like it. It's just amazing on how it all goes together. So once you've got it all cleaned up, it's sandblasted, then I'm actually welding this together with what's called muggy weld. I think I've actually used the aluminum welding rods before too, and I think they work. We'll have to explore that option in the future with some other pieces. But I had this readily available here to me. This is works great. It's a zinc-based material as well for the muggy weld, and it welds the pot metals and things of that nature quite well. So you just got to get it heated enough to where it pulls in it melts and pulls in the rod. Melts it all the way into and I'm just welding the jaw set together to the skull so that it remains open all of the time. I am using a flux here too, as well as you can see there. It's a flux that they send with muggy weld. So once it's all welded together and then allowed to cool for some time, coming back and just cleaning up some of the stuff that was a little bit messy from the welding process. So we're just cleaning that up now. Now I'm using an acid-based material. This is a copper sulfate, I believe, and it's mixed with one teaspoon to that entire sprayer of water. So it doesn't have to be a lot. In fact, you could adjust the recipe as needed depending on how dark you wanted your piece. So this is it here. This is one brand that uses it, and you can buy that at Home Depot. So it'll last you forever, unless you have to kill some roots in your septic. Anyway, we're going on to the fine polishing period here, and I'm just using some different polishing pads that Dremel makes. Excuse me. And then this is an angle grinder with I think I have a felt pad on here that I'm just doing some final touch-up polishing. And once it's all done, I'm clear coating it here, and this is with a Rust-Oleum clear coat, and it seems to work pretty well. I like laying it on pretty heavy. It dries to almost a satin finish. We don't want it super shiny, at least I don't, so it'll dry to that satin and look just right. So here's this is a clock I picked up at a thrift store as well. So along your travels, you can pick up a lot of stuff that you can reuse and make into beautiful artwork. This has just happened to be a redwood burl, a clock that was sitting on the shelf, and it was kind of cool the way it was, but I don't really like them that much. So I decided that I was going to use it for making a base, and then I have some leftover wood too that I can turn some pins or something out of. Just some really, really beautiful wood, and it's fairly easy to work with. It's really soft. I guess that's its biggest downfall, is it's really soft wood. But it's redwood and it's burl, so we're going to go ahead and use it today. And just knocking off all the letters so we can have a flat surface to sand. And they came off pretty easy. I knocked off that base you see there. Didn't really show that in the video, but got to cut something out of these videos or they'll get really boring. Anyway, now we're cutting it on the miter saw. Just squaring it up where I want it. And once we have it, got it cut square. Then we'll go ahead and sand it up and make it all pretty. Just using a belt sander here to kind of flatten it. It was in pretty rough shape when I started. The maker who made the clock left it pretty rough. So it took a bit of sanding, belt sander, and then the orbital to get it right where I wanted the final kind of finish and flatness. So, and you work through your sandpapers all the way from 80 grit down to 220, even 320. 220 is more than sufficient on this soft redwood though. So once it's sanded up nice, I took the router to it and made a nice clean edge on the top. This is a Roman OG, I think it's a quarter inch bit. So, and then I sanded it up, so all smooth. And now we're giving it a clear coat here as my little daughter's running through the frame. So, and I'm using pretty much the same stuff as I did on the skull, spraying multiple coats. And there it is, guys, all done up. I think it turned out fantastic. I set it on some granite or marble, whatever you want to call that, that I pulled off of a candle holder and thought it would work really well on my skull. So there it is, and thanks for watching. Subscribe, and we'll see you next time.